A very good morning and a very big welcome to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of FRSIS 2022. Now, I'd like to introduce our judges today. The Chief Judge is Associate Prof. Dr. Haliza Media Harun, Senior Lecturer, University Sains Islam Malaysia. The second judge is Ms. Salmiah Hani binti Siddiq from Sekolah Menengah Sains Hulu Selangor. The third judge is Ms. Shafizah binti Sharif, Sekolah Menengah Sains Tunku Aisyah Rohani. And I, Faris Adil bin Sapian from Sekolah Dato' Abdul Razak, while the timekeepers, Ahmad Daniel bin Zafrul Azmi and Mun Adam Aiman bin Faizal are from Sekolah Dato' Abdul Razak. Now, allow me to read the rules. Each team should consist of presenters and a technical assistant. The presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to the team. The duration of the presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. The bell will be rung once at the 9th minute and twice at the 10th minute. A question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation. Now, I would like to invite the first team to present.
Very good evening, everyone. Honorable judges and also all participants, we are the representative of Sekolah Menengah Atas Negeri 1 Purworejo, Indonesia. This is our presentation on the topic Learning Less as the Effect of School Closures on Students' Academic Performance and How to Turn It into Learning Gain. First, let's get to know our team members. I'm Afifah, and here are Amelia, Lutfida, and Andin. Acted as our supervising teacher is Mrs. Arvina. So as we know, this pandemic caused the governments all around the world to introduce lockdown in early 2020, and one of the direct impacts we as students faced was the school closures. And the classroom then moved to a new concept called distance learning. This practice of learning brought unreadiness and also significantly affects a crisis for students. Beyond falling behind on their education, many students experiencing difficulties. This is a challenge for us to avert lost COVID generation, and that's why we're conducting research on this issue. But before we go into the deeper part, we have to know the definitions of learning loss. Learning loss refers to any general or specific loss of knowledge or to reversals in academic progress. As the pandemic occurs, the term learning loss can be caused by school closures, which during that time, students' academic progress claimed to be slower. And then, how about learning gain? Learning gain can be defined as self-improvement of knowledge or self-development made by students year by year. Then, we finally formulated that the problems of our research are: first, how students' academic performance before and during the pandemic; second, what are the causes of learning loss experienced by students; and third, how students' academic performance after the pandemic. Move to the methodology. This research is a quantitative approach so that the data can be clearly communicated in percentage. And in gathering the data, we conducted a survey with questionnaire which contains several questions based on students' academic performance before, during, and also after the pandemic. Then, the subjects of our research were students from 6 different countries that are Indonesia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Brazil, and also the United Kingdom. We also had some interviews with some respondents on the range of age 15 to 18 years old. And these are the statement videos of Anissa from Indonesia and also Ariji from Bangladesh. Then, the result of our research will be explained by my partner, Lutfida.
Halo, saya Anissa dari Indonesia. Menurut saya, pembelajaran online karena adanya pandemi menyebabkan kemampuan memahami kita menurun. Hal tersebut karena banyak sekali hambatan, seperti susah fokus, terkendala sinyal, mungkin HP error, dan juga penyampaian materi secara tidak langsung itu sulit dipahami. Jadi, kalau dibandingkan untuk memilih pembelajaran online atau offline, saya akan lebih memilih pembelajaran secara offline. Karena penyampaian materi yang diberikan itu lebih mudah dipahami dibandingkan secara online.
Hello, this is Archie from Bangladesh, and according to the Bangladesh educational system, I know Pakistan. So during pandemic 2022-2021, these 2 years, I got to have online classes. Comparing between online and offline classes, I definitely prefer offline classes more because in online classes, a lot of the times I found it really hard to interact with the teachers and students and get my answers properly. Sometimes bad network was another issue. After online classes, my academic performance altogether got worse, so I prefer offline classes. Thank you.
Well, there are 3 points of our data analysis. First, how's the students' academic performance before and during the pandemic? As for the local respondents, 66% students claimed that their academic performance before the pandemic was good. 8.5% students claimed that their academic performance before the pandemic was fair. And 25.5% students claimed that their academic performance before the pandemic was poor. And for the international respondents from 6 countries, around 38% students claimed that their academic performance before the pandemic was excellent, while around 54% students stated that their academic performance before the pandemic was good. And the other, around 8% stated that their academic performance before the pandemic was poor. Next, around 98% local respondents agree that online learning during the pandemic has negative impacts and caused degradation of students' academic performance. Around 85% international respondents agreed so as well, and around 15% international students disagree with the statement. Second, what actually are the causes of learning loss experienced by students? Around 74% local respondents claim that they face many obstacles during online class, and for the international respondents, 61.5% students also face many obstacles during online class, while 38.5% students didn't face many obstacles. The most common obstacles posed by students during online class include 2. The lack of knowledge on technology usage. The way teachers delivered material is hard to understand. Moreover, the overwhelming tasks and assignments from teachers make it difficult for students to manage their time. 3. The lack of study motivation, which led to laziness, because students couldn't interact with the teachers and schoolmates directly. And 4. A lot of distraction at home that caused students couldn't focus on the online learning itself, caused by unconducive situation. The third point is how's the student academic performance after the pandemic? After almost 2 years of online learning, schools reopened and they conducted offline learning. Around 68% students from local respondents stated that their academic performance after the pandemic got better, and around 32% students claimed that their academic performance after the pandemic was still worse. As for the international respondents, around 54% students claimed that their academic performance is getting better, and the other, around 46% claimed that it's still getting worse. Next, 91.5% local students prefer offline learning, and 8.5% students prefer offline learning, while around 85% international students prefer offline learning, and around 15% students prefer online learning. After we accumulated the data, we found that 61% students claim that their academic performance after the pandemic is better, and 88% students claim that they prefer offline learning to online learning. However, around 55% local students claim that they find it difficult to adapt as the school got back to normal. Around 77% international students claim that they also find it difficult to adapt to offline learning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we finally came to the conclusion that first, around 79% of the students claimed that their academic performance before the pandemic was good, and during the pandemic, around 91% of the students agreed that their academic performance got worse. Moving on to the second conclusion, the causes of learning loss experienced by students are found as follows. Around 5% of students stated lack of facilities, around 37% knowledge, and around 25% study motivation, around 21% internet connection problems, and 12% face a lot of distractions during studying at home. Third, students' academic performance after the pandemic is better. However, many students are still experiencing difficulty in the learning process itself, which potentially leads to the loss of COVID generation. So, Afifah, what can we do to avoid the lost COVID generation?
Okay, Ludwida, in order to avoid seventh generation, we're strengthening the learning community by revitalizing a study program consisting of high school students. This program, which facilitates students to share each other's knowledge, is called Tutor Sebaya program. Tutor Sebaya occurs when students can teach or share with each other students in a particular subject area. The emphasis is on the learning process, including the emotional support that learners offer each other. At first, Tutor Sebaya program will only include students from our own school, and then may broaden to the wider context and involve students locally and also internationally. As to help students communicate effectively and efficiently, we will be using social media provided. Everyone, education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. Learning loss as the impact of COVID-19 pandemic wouldn't be our obstacle to keep going towards learning gain. So that's all the things that we present. May all this be beneficial for you all. Finally, thank you for your attention.
Now, I would like to invite participants to ask questions.
Sorry. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, I have a question. Okay, from your data, it seems that everyone improved after the pandemic, right? So can you tell me how do you measure the students' achievement or performance to come up with the data saying that the students have improved from the pandemic?
All right, thank you so much for the question. I would like to answer it. Well, in our survey, there is a question which we ask them whether their students' academic performance got worse or got better after the pandemic. And most of the students answer that their academic performance after the pandemic is getting better, but they also stated that they face many difficulty to adapt to the sudden new concept when like we before we doing the online learning and now we go back to the offline learning, so students find it difficult to adapt or to catch up with the materials that the teachers are giving through the offline learning. Thank you.
Sorry again. Do you take the answer through exam result, or just from the understanding of the lessons, or how?
Well, actually, the students' academic performance actually, most of the students stated that their understanding on the material is better because they are because I'm sorry, I mean the understanding of the students the understanding of the students matter of the material is getting better. However, they find it difficult to adapt. So it is not the mark on the subject, but it is the way they understand the material that is given from the teacher. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my another question, right? What are the challenges, or what were the challenges that you faced when you started collecting the data regarding this investigation?
All right, thank you for the question. So actually, we didn't really face the challenge to gather the data because we have a connection towards the friends all around the world, because our school have ever conducted an event called EED, or English Experimental Day, where one of the project of that event is called Pen Pal project. So we basically like doing a meeting weekly and talk about the current issues. That's why we made friends with some of the students and we got to know them more. So we can share the data with them. So we can understand the material that is given from the teacher.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, there was a connection problems with our devices. Did my answer reach you properly? Thank you.
Now, I would like to hear from the second team to present.
Good afternoon and welcome to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of FRSIS 2022. Now, I'd like to introduce our judges today. The Chief Judge is Associate Professor Dr. Haliza binti Harun, Senior Lecturer, University Science Islam Malaysia. The second judge is Ms. Salmia Hani binti Siddiq from Sekolah Menengah Sains Hulu Selangor. And the third judge is Ms. Shafiza binti Sharif from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Aisyah Rohani. And I am Amirul Hakim bin Kamal Zaman from Sekolah Dato' Abdul Razak, while the timekeepers are Madania bin Zafrul Azmi and Muhammad Adam Aiman bin Faizal are from Sekolah Dato' Abdul Razak. Now, allow me to read the rules. Each team should consist of presenters and a technical assistant. The presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to the team. The duration of the presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. The bell will be rung once at the 9th minute and twice at the 10th minute. A question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation. Let us invite the first team from Mark Tuart High School.
Hapon sa inyong tanan.
I'm Rene.
I'm Arjin.
And
And we are the researchers from Magdud National High School, Philippines, Davao City. The COVID 19 pandemic has caused abrupt and profound changes around the world. This is the worst shock to education system in decades, when the longest school closures combined with a looming recession. What are we going to do for these students that have lost so much learning during the pandemic? In line with the theme Averting a Lost COVID Generation, the challenges. The question posits, how are we going to avert or prevent in the near future a lost generation of learners? Should there be pandemics like the coronavirus? Hence, we researchers initiated Making Up for the Lost Time, Self-Pacing and the Face-to-Face Modality in the Transition of Learning. The COVID 19 pandemic had and continues to impact students' lives negatively, and this has created the largest disruption of education system in human history. This global crisis caused an abrupt change in formal schooling and alarmingly halted Philippine education for 2 long years, ultimately leading to difficulty in proper transition of learning. In a global sense, the United Nations expressed in preventing a learning crisis from becoming a generational catastrophe requires urgent action from everyone. In the same manner, in the Philippines, from the modular to face learning shift, student self pacing poses a challenge to the educational system. In general context, the transition of learning refers to three major transitional points in the public education system: when students move from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school, and from high school to college. But in the context of our research, transition of learning is the transition from modular learning modality and modular to face modality or traditional learning.
thank you, Ashley, for that wonderful introduction. And now for our research question. Our study aimed to discover and understand student challenges and self-pacing strategies in the transition of learning. Specifically, number one, What are these challenges encountered by the students in the face-to-face modality? Number two, how are the students coping with these challenges through self-pacing in terms of time management, goal setting, and student technique? And lastly, what are the recommendations to improve student self-pacing in the transition of learning?
In this slide, we present to you our theories where our research is anchored. The first two are for self-pacing and the last two are for transition of learning. Firstly, according to this theory, the learner exercises a great deal of independence in deciding what is worthwhile to learn and how to approach the learning task. The next one stated that students move from being dependent on others to self-direction as they mature. The third one studies the academic outcome of the students in transition phase. Lastly, it focuses on the idea that learners can adjust their thinking based on new information.
Methodology. For our research design, we use qualitative case study. For our research local, public secondary high school in Davao City, Philippines. For respondents, 10 senior high school students through purposive sampling by a given set of criteria. For research instrument, we utilize interview questions or interview guide and conduct analysis. For research analysis, we utilize thematic analysis wherein we thoroughly reviewed, summarized, and organized the results of our interviews.
For our data gathering procedures, we identify the experience of the students. We conduct focus group discussion and in-depth interview among the participants. We categorize challenges, techniques, and recommendations. And lastly, we analyze the information that we gathered.
And now for our result and conclusion. Challenges encountered by the students in the face-to-face modality. First, lack of knowledge. Student lack of knowledge emerged as the first challenge that the students encountered. All teachers estimated that their students were behind in their curriculum learning compared to where they would normally expect them to be. This insufficient knowledge was due to the almost halted education which lasted for 2 years, where self-learning modules were given. Second, unexpected transition of learning. The rapid transition to a distance learning from modular to face-to-face modality. This is a good sign that the pandemic is coming to an end. The shift from modular distance learning to face-to-face learning entailed certain disadvantages such as being unaccustomed and pressured in doing class reporting, inadequacy in spoken written English, and not being skilled enough in constructing academic essay and recitation. And third, poor time management. Student difficulty in managing time emerged as a challenge as they lack self-discipline and were used to procrastinate. And I know one of you all also procrastinate. And lastly, academic pressure. As students experience the pressure of unexpected transition of learning, lack of knowledge, and the pressure of having a poor time management, this pressure also leads to stress, which can be categorized into two. One, external pressure that the students encounter from their parents and teachers, and internal pressure, are pressure that eventually leads the students into depression and anxiety.
To answer the second question, self-pacing coping strategies are utilized by the students. Results showed time management, goal setting, and student techniques as indicators. First, according to the students, the best strategy for time management and self-pacing was to be responsible on managing time and setting priorities. As such, maintaining an up-to-date calendar or to-do list. And setting priorities can help to avoid stress from having too much schoolwork. Moreover, students shared that setting goals signifies committing one's thoughts, feelings, and actions in achieving the goal. And the ideal step is mental preparation, planning, action, and motivation reward system. And lastly, students also shared their self-pacing techniques, which are setting smaller goals, such as realistic goals, giving reminders such as verbal and visual reminders, as Pomodoro technique. This technique is a time management system that encourages people to work with the time they have rather than against it. And the last one is taking self-pacing as a challenge to efficiently maintain focus.
To answer the third questions, here are the recommendations for improved student self-pacing in the transition of learning. The first category is maintaining focus, taking lessons seriously, strict self-management, self-discipline, and manage responsibilities. Second, strict self-management, having self-discipline and manage responsibilities to have higher academic performance. And third, various and engaging techniques to be employed by teachers for students to be entertained and remembered lessons more efficiently. For fourth, improved learning environment. Students atten- learning environment increases students' attention and focus promotes meaningful learning experiences, encourages higher level of student performance and motivates students to practice higher level critical thinking skills. And for fifth, technology utilization. Since teenagers use this open platform to share information, communication, and construction of their cyber identity. For six, getting assistance. Understanding your unique skills and weaknesses as well as knowing when you require assistance. And that also the two aspect of a self-awareness. Self-awareness is acknowledging that you need help and self-advocacy is asking for it. And lastly, the negative to positive substitution. Most of the students don't like studying. In order for them to continue to study even if they don't want to, they use other people around them to motivate and help them.
Encountered by the students are lack of knowledge, the unexpected transition of learning from modular to face modality, poor time management, and academic pressure. For self-pacing strategies are number one, time management. Our students are being responsible and setting their own schedule. Number two, goal setting where students do mental preparation, planning, taking action, and reward system. And number three, student technique where students do set realistic goals, giving reminders, and being focused. The recommendations for improved student self pacing in the transition of learning are maintaining focus, strict self management, various and engaging techniques and activities, improved learning environment, technology utilization, getting assistance, and lastly, the substitution of negativity to positivity.
For our recommendation, we recommend self-pacing to the following: Department of Education, school heads, students, teachers, parents and guardians, and last, our future researchers.
Here's our references if you want to look further. Once again, we are the researchers from Magtud National High School, Philippines. Terima kasih, Kirana Mendingar. Thank you for listening. We are now entertaining questions.
What a thought-provoking presentation from Magtud National High School. I think it's time for the Q&A session, right, Gazi?
Sami- Of course, Amirul, the
Hello.
Q&A session will now take place. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi and a very good afternoon. My name is Faris Adel from Sekolah Dato' Abdul Razak. As you said earlier, one of your solutions is to tell the students to stay focused. May I know one of the how can we focus in class?
According to our results, it shows that students can maintain their focus by taking it as a challenge, and that's a unique result of our research. Also, with the techniques provided by the student, such as Pomodoro technique, it can help students to maintain their focus and efficiently use their time. And that's all. Thank you.
Hello, hi. I have a question. In your describing students' challenges in your study, which one is more overwhelming to the students, whether they are external or internal factors? Thank you.
I beg your pardon. Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Based in your studies just now, in facing students' challenges, right? There are two factors that you mentioned where you elaborated quite extensively. There are two. One is external factors. Second is internal factors. So based on your study, which one is more overwhelming to the students?
The most overwhelming in that is the external pressure, where the students encountered the pressure from their parents and teachers, where the parents and teacher could not, the students could not meet the expectation that the parents and teachers that they are expecting.
To clearly explain, the external pressure is the one that causes the students to more be pressured, which is the expectation from teachers and parents, because their expectation is way too high for the students to reach. Because of this pandemic, we can't reach that as a student too, and that's very, very pressure to me as a student too.
With the Q&A session completed, that concludes the session for the afternoon. Thank you, Magto National High School, Philippines.
Good afternoon and welcome to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of 10th FRSIS 2022. I am Amir Hakim bin Kamaruzaman.
Joined by me, Ghazi Muzaffar bin Arif Jamili.
We are from Sekolah Dato Abdul Razak and will be your moderators for this lovely session. We would also like to introduce our judges for today.
The Chief Judge is Associate Professor Dr. Haliza Binti Harun, Senior Lecturer from University Science Islam Malaysia.
The second judge is Ms. Salmia Hani binti Siddiq from Sekolah Menengah Sains Hulu Selangor.
The third judge is Ms. Shafizah binti Sharif from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Aisyah Rohani. I would also like to introduce the timekeepers, Ahmad Daniel bin Zafrul Azmi and Muhammad Adam Aiman bin Faizal from Sekolah Dato Abdul Razak.
Now, let's go over the rules. First of all, each team should consist of presenters and a technical assistant. Next, the presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to the team.
Let's not forget, the duration of the presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. The timekeeper will ring the bell once at the 9th minute and twice at the 10th minute. Finally, a question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation.
Please keep in mind that the Q&A session is only open to 2 questions max and will last for 5 minutes.
Without further ado, let's invite our third team for today from Mojokerto High School, East Java, Indonesia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The honorable two judges and all audience, first of all, let us thank to the Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala because of His blessing we are able to attend this competition. Secondly, salawat and salam also differ to our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who has guided us from the darkness into the brightness. Dear audience, the presentation today is about Merdeka curriculum for learning disruption recovery. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we show our presentation, let us introducing our team. We are delegation from Man to Mojokerto, East Java, Indonesia. I'm Mahera Yantika Eswara, and the person next to me is.
I am Muhammad Hilman Wajadi.
I'm Muhammad Elian Buliana Mazian.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now its presentation session will be given for presenters. The time is yours.
Okay, so students around the world have lost about 1.8 trillion hours of face-to-face learning since COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdown. Globally, around 131 million students in 11 countries are losing 3/4 of face-to-face learning since March 2020 till September 2021. Among the students, 59% or nearly 77 million students are nearly lost their learning time in the school. Moreover, according to the UNESCO data, there are more than 870 million students at all levels are facing disruption in their education. Students cannot get their education and any kind of benefit that provided by the school. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly affected the educational sector. With this pandemic, students cannot get their learning activities, although the learning activities have shifted to online learning models. This has actually caused new problem in educational sector, starting like the difficulties of using gadget, the availability of internet connection, and to the existence of infrastructure in each area. With the introduction of this, our Minister of Education, Research, Culture, and Technology, Nadim Anwar Makarim, innovated the Merdeka curriculum. The Merdeka curriculum is intended to address the impact of learning disruption. Seeing this, we conduct a study to test whether the Merdeka curriculum is the right innovation to overcome the impact of learning disruption. We conduct a study with the quantitative method using online questionnaires that we give to several teachers and students. So after we conduct a survey test through distribution of online questionnaires that we give to several teachers and students, there are 75.62% stated that the Merdeka curriculum is suitable to overcome the impact of learning disruption.
Okay, so the role of the curriculum in the education sector is expected to recover the learning disruption. So, the Merdeka curriculum innovation is an option for learning disruption recovery because it is more flexible, independent, and focused on essential materials. Teachers are also free to choose learning tools according to our needs and our characteristics. So, this curriculum has a better model than the previous curriculum because in the previous curriculum, we applied the scientific approach method that only focused on student general cognitive abilities. This kind of approach method does have advantage of improving student cognitive abilities, but it is less efficient for exploring and developing our potential content in each student. In the Merdeka curriculum, we use a differentiated approach method that can accommodate students' learning needs. So teachers can facilitate students according to their needs because each student has a different characteristics, so they cannot be given the same treatment. And this project-based curriculum lends towards cooperative learning. It means to implementing this, there are the following steps. The first is to presenting facts or phenomenon that are relevant to the environment around us. And the second is finding a problem from that phenomenon. And the third is to develop a project plan. And the last is the result of the discussion, which can be in the form of making a product, movement, experiment, action, or activity. The teacher can be considered as a facilitator who develops our cognitive ability to think or can be called a coach. So they are helped to direct us to discover our potential and generate new ideas. They conduct a two-way conversation carried out to explore and map us for the situation and then produce a plan or action.
Okay, from what my friend said, that means the teacher have role to bring together us to be more concerned with all kinds of problems that occur in our environment. It is easier for us to deal with than the previous curriculum. We think more broadly and exploring new issues from us that have been provided the teacher. It's also provide freedom in choosing according to our interests and talents, which can encourage our learning motivation. In implementing this, we are considered different from other students. So, teachers are involved to find their own learning method to be developed. Before the project starts, we engage a diagnostic assessment test to identify our learning style. So, our learning style can be more designed and appropriate. And by the way, this is our first time for doing a diagnostic assessment. And it's turned out amazing because we can understand how far our competencies, weaknesses, strength, and our interest in learning style. Before we start our project, we do a diagnostic assessment. After we doing a diagnostic assessment, my teacher tell us to gather our friends based on learning style. So we are challenged to think critically with our friends to make project from phenomenon that was given by our teacher. For example, our teacher gave the phenomenon of cassava farmer who did not have enough money and asked us to look for the problems. Then we found out that the cassava farmer had financial problem. So he could not send his children to school. In that way, we will think of solution of these problems and we should provide of solution like managing the cassava in the chips or helping marketing through social media. So basically, in this curriculum, we as a student can express ourselves more creatively as we went through a project-based learning process. We as a student are directed to exploring new issues around and being adaptive, which can develop our cognitive ability. With this curriculum, we can easy to understand and we can get like with through learning process through a learning process like this we are Through learning process like this, students can catch up on their lesson during the pandemic. And it is proven that this curriculum is very suitable to apply at this time in order to reduce the impact caused by the pandemic.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the conclusion of presentation today is the implementation of the learning project due to the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the components of the education unit. These changes must be addressed immediately with a renewal and improvement of each component in education. One of these modifications is curriculum development. The Merdeka curriculum in its characteristics provides hope for the recovery of student learning by considering the meaning in learning and the uniqueness of each student. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully the presentation today will give benefit for us. Thank you for your attention. See you later. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Such a fascinating presentation from Mojokerto. Now, don't you think it's time for the Q&A session, Gazi?
Of course, Amirul. The Q&A session will now take place.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll ask a question, or maybe I'll later ask another question. It depends on how you answer. But can you explain to us what Merdeka curriculum is? That is number one. And whether it has been implemented in schools. Is it a government program, or it's just a construct, or it's just a concept that you have that you would like to propose? All right. So one is, what is Merdeka curriculum? Number two is it being implemented already, or it's just something that you proposed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again? I can't hear your voice.
Okay, number one is the question, what is Merdeka curriculum? Probably you can give the components or the subjects involved in or included in Merdeka curriculum. So what is Merdeka curriculum? The second one is it a government program, government sponsored program, or it's just only something like a concept that your team want to propose?
Okay, so the Merdeka curriculum is an innovation of our Ministry of Education. So the government launched the Merdeka Belajar curriculum to overcome the lag due to the pandemic. So this curriculum is for the high school level. According to the Kemendikbud site, the Merdeka curriculum was developed as a more flexible curriculum framework, while simultaneously focusing on essential materials and developing students' character and competencies. And the main characteristic of the curriculum that supports the recovery of this learning is project-based learning for the development of soft skills and characters according to the profile of Pancasila students. Students focus on essential materials so that they have sufficient time to study in depth various basic competencies such as literacy and numeracy. Teachers are more flexible to carry out differentiated learning according to the abilities of students and adapt it to local context and content. Thank you.
You're welcome. So have you used Did you get the chance to use Merdeka curriculum? Can you? Did you get the chance to use the Merdeka curriculum or to access the Merdeka curriculum? Did you use Merdeka curriculum before this? Have you got the chance to use it?
So in our school, the Merdeka curriculum itself has been applied about 1 years ago. So yes, we have experienced this kind of Merdeka curriculum. Yes.
Okay, so my last question. So how was your experience using Merdeka curriculum? How was your
Well,
experience, using Merdeka curriculum?
okay. So in the Merdeka curriculum itself, I really enjoyed the learning experience because in the Merdeka curriculum, the teacher give us some kind of project about in 6 months in one semester. The teachers will give some project that we can work together with the other class. So, is it last year is about making a dish from what I forgot about the plant name, but it is about it is from the plant, and I enjoyed that learning activities.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
With the Q&A session completed, that concludes the session for the afternoon. Thank you, Mojokerto High School, East Java, Indonesia.
For the online guests that just joined the live, don't worry, there's another session upcoming and it will be possibly more informative. Until next time, we wish you a great day. What a good afternoon, and welcome to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of 10th FRSIS 2022. I am Amirul Hakim bin Kamruzaman.
Joined by me, Ghazi Muzaffar bin Arif Jamili.
We are from Sekolah Dato Abdul Razak and will be your moderators for this lovely session. We would also like to introduce our judges for today.
The Chief Judge is Associate Professor Dr. Haliza binti Harun, Senior Lecturer from University Science Islam Malaysia.
Taking place as the second judge is Miss Salmia Hani binti Siddiq from Sekolah Menengah Sains Hulu Selangor.
Lastly, the third judge is Miss Shafizah binti Sharif from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Aisyah Rohani. I would also like to introduce the timekeepers, Ahmad Daniel bin Zafrul Azmi and Muhammad Adam Aiman bin Faiza from Sekolah Dato Abdul Razak.
Now allow us to state the rules. First of all, each team should consist of presenters and a technical assistant. Next, the presentation must focus on the sub-theme assigned to the team. In this case, it's averting the lost COVID generation, the challenges.
Let's not forget, the duration of the presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. The timekeeper will ring the bell once at the 9th minute and twice at the 10th minute. Finally, a question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation.
Please keep in mind that the Q&A session is only open to 2 questions max, and it will last for 5 minutes.
Without further ado, let's invite our fourth team for today, Chalaulu Anatolian High School.
Hi everyone, I'm Betül.
I'm Elif Naz.
I'm Zümra.
And I'm Yaren.
We are students from Jalal Antolian High School, and today we want to mention the challenges that COVID-19 brought into our lives and how we can find possible solutions for them. First of all, I want to give a quick introduction about our sub-team. We have been living with COVID-19 for almost 3 years. It has taken too many lives from us and left a lot of damage behind. We can still perceive the harm that came into our lives with this disease, or could be called pandemic. And we can say that this generation, the generation that got affected the most by this harm is teenagers. Almost everything in our lives are so much more different than they used to be. The way we make friends, the way we buy things, the way we learn. And that is the subject we want to urge upon today. The changes on education systems could be considered as obstacles because learning online requires internet, and so many children around the world don't have any access or don't have enough access to the internet. That means most of the students have dropped behind, and unless we change our priorities within a really short time and take action to find solutions about these problems, these generation of young people may be lost. That was a short introduction to our sub-team. Now we need to talk about the effects, or the challenges we can also say, of COVID-19. The youth has faced and continues facing so many challenges during this period of pandemic, and it's not only the pandemic that affects our lives, but also the measures that were taken against COVID-19 limits our lives too. And as an example, 1.6 billion students around the world has been affected by the disruption of education. And the worst part is that this disruption has hit the disadvantaged students hardest, and these impacts could be lifelong. This disruption of education caused distractibility in general and consumed the desire of teenagers about going on to post-secondary education. And disengaging from school or education makes students lose the knowledge they already had. Online education made it also less possible to earn the skills or the mindset teenagers may need later in their lives. And in addition, academic learning was also less efficient during online education. As we all know, COVID is a really infectious disease. So in order to not get sick, especially on the beginning of the pandemic, people had to stay away from each other, and all the relationships between friends and family members came down to online chatting only. And that caused teenagers to be more self-enclosed. The big changes in life conditions has made them feel oppressed and hopeless about their future. That improved already existing mental health issues. It was also hard for families to deal with their children's mental health. That created more problems both for families and the children. And not being able to access a safer place, teenagers and children had to expose more threats and violence, both inside or outside of their homes. Since the lockdown has started, basic needs have been harder to satisfy, and because the children and their families have been affected by financial problems, and the need for digital devices added one more problem: some people couldn't access them. Children also had problems with education and some activities. They lacked the movement, so it damaged their physical health. And we can give development and structure problems as examples. When people stayed at home, it was so hard to exercise or being physically active. That was a problem for all of us, and that was a risk on teenagers' physical health. The pandemic has changed everything around the world, and that made everything a little bit unclear. Risks about future jobs or education or finance also caused a lot of mental diseases on young children. The rest of the presentation will be presented by my teammate Yaren.
Now I'll be sharing some statistics showing the association between a country's income and education during the COVID-19 pandemic. As we can see here in this graph that the highest rates of missed school days belong to lower middle income countries, whereas the number of days that have been missed in high income countries isn't as high. And moving on to the next graph, we see three different ways students used in order to access remote learning, which are internet, radio, and TV. Students in upper middle income countries used internet significantly more than other countries since they had easier access to internet. However, when you look at radio usage, low income countries have the highest percentage of usage. So both of these graphs show us the socioeconomic inequality among kids, which has been more apparent during the pandemic. We have talked about problems. Now I want to talk about some foundations that are trying to take action on the issues we have just talked about. And the first one is World Health Organization, who wants to ensure safe schooling. Therefore, they've been trying to educate parents, schools, and teachers about safe schooling. Their second aim is to rebuild a good health system for children. So they did a collaborative project with Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Romania, which was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And their aim is to limit the impacts of COVID-19 on maternal, newborn, child, adolescent, and aging health services. Who also made sure to safeguard the quality of care given to children who were affected by infections. Another foundation I want to talk about is Unicef and their 6-point plan. First of all, they wanted to make sure that all children could get face-to-face education by getting rid of the digital divide. They also guaranteed access to affordable services such as health and nutrition services. UNICEF also cared about the mental health of children and young people, which was heavily damaged during the pandemic, and they wanted to end abuse, violence, or neglect towards all children. Water is an essential part of our health. Unfortunately, for some people, finding clean water is a very hard task. So UNICEF tried to provide clean water for everyone, and they also addressed environmental and climate change issues. Decreasing child poverty and ensuring an inclusive recovery for everyone were also necessary parts of the 6-point plan of UNICEF. They also helped children and their families who were going through conflicts, disasters, wars, or displacement. UNICEF made a great effort to help and protect these people. Lastly, I would like to add, it should not be forgotten that the sooner we act, the more potential the next generation of young people has. So it all depends on us and how soon we take action. This was the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much for listening us and paying attention.
Such a majestic presentation from Chalaulu High School. I think it's time for the Q&A session, right, Ghazi?
Of course, Amirul. The Q&A session will now begin.
Okay, done. All right, okay. My question while we wait for the audience to ask a question, I do hope that one of the students would take this opportunity to ask our international students a question, but I will start first. Okay, my question is, what were the challenges that you face when you, during your data collection stage? I assume or I presume that you collected your data based, it's more of a library-based research rather than, qualitative or quantitative research where you go to interview people and so on. So is this research more of a library-based research? That is one. And the other question is what were the challenges that you faced when you were collecting your data?
That was mostly a library research, but it was again a lot really hard for us because it's a really current matter, and finding new and accurate information on this matter is a little bit hard. Only a few foundations or websites serve information on the subject, and those foundations were UNICEF and WHO. The other informations weren't accurate or current, so it was hard to collect current data.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
You're
questions?
welcome.
Okay.
Hello, I have one question. You mentioned number one about UNICEF's claim about getting rid of digital divide. Would you mind explaining more regarding your situation, in your situation about this? Thank you.
We mean by that online education, the requirement by online education should be at least it is possible. So maybe the government can provide devices for the students that could provide for students to join the lessons or something else. Maybe my teammates could add something else too.
I
With
will
the Q&A.
answer this question too. Students had sufficient access to reliable computer or a video conferencing software. government need to do something about this subject.
With the Q&A session completed, that concludes the session for the afternoon. Thank you, Chalolu Anatolian High School. Until next time, we wish wonderful day. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.